Hey guys, this is Ian and welcome to today's video in which I'm going to be tackling yet another character from the Batman Rogue Gallery, and this particular one is also one of my favourite villains across all franchises. This is Poison Ivy. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Poison Ivy herself and some of the directions and things that I've chosen with this painting a little bit later in the video. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about my experiences so far with this series of videos and the build-up to each character in general. So far, we've done 3 of my favourite characters. We started with Harley Quinn, we went on to Joker, and now we are doing Poison Ivy. These are 3 of my all-time favourite characters across any franchise, like I say. And they're fairly unusual things for me to draw. I tend to avoid drawing characters that I really like. I guess I'm always slightly worried that I'm not going to do them justice in some way, like I'm going to mess up the painting or something. And that's been true for all 3 of these paintings so far. It's one of the reasons that I've decided to really push this particular series towards the Batman's Rogues Gallery, because there are so many of my favorite characters in there, and I think it's a really good idea for me to push myself to draw these characters that I love, because I avoid it so often. Usually what I find is if I draw a character that I've avoided drawing in the past, then it makes it a lot easier to draw them in the future. For example, I have actually done the Joker a couple of times now on this channel. Once, 2 or 3 years ago now, and another time, well, just in the last episode of this series, I guess. So it does make it a little bit easier to draw these, or to tackle these characters after you've done them once. Or certainly that's true for me anyway. Now, all that being said, because Poison Ivy is pretty much one of my favourite characters, as I have said several times already, I find that when it comes to doing the line work and really planning out the character, that I can spend a lot of time fixated on just the line work itself. In fact, with this painting, the line work took me about 10 hours, which is frankly ridiculous. Generally speaking, I can get the line work down for a character in an hour, maybe 2 maximum. With this one, because of the way that I approached the line work, I started with her and then I worked from the foreground to the background. It actually made it a lot more complicated. I could probably have cut the time that it took me to do the line work down by at least half if I'd sketched out from the back forward and then neatened it, as opposed to starting with the character and then sort of adding in the background and layers in behind it. But it worked out in the end, and I think the final picture, and I hope you'll agree, is probably the best of the series so far. Certainly it's got the most depth and the most detail to it. So on to the painting itself and the character herself. Now, I've said this probably 4 or 5 times already. I'm gonna say it again. Poison Ivy is one of my favourite villains across all franchises, so I really wanted to do her justice in this painting. One of the things that I've been trying to do with these particular ones is to portray the character in an environment that best suits them, or in some way could feel like it is a scene taken directly from one of the animated series or the animated movies, or even one of the graphic novels, so that it feels very much like they are part of a complete world. And to do that with Poison Ivy, obviously I had to surround her by her plants and such, put her into a greenhouse type environment as well. One of the things I really like playing with Gotham in general is the 1920s noir kind of aesthetic that it often has, especially in the animated series and the animated films, and the Tim Burton movies as well. I really wanted to capture that kind of feeling to the environment, that sort of 1920s noir thing. Obviously very difficult in a greenhouse, so I decided to go with a style not dissimilar to things like Crystal Palace, Kew Gardens, that kind of wrought iron, large structure with very little windows in it. That's something that you see quite a lot in this sort of 1920s era greenhouses, or winter gardens is the other thing that they're often referred to as. And I think that it's worked out quite well. You can only just sort of see it in the background. It's only a very small part of the painting, but I think that it really does lend a lot to the atmosphere. The other thing that I tend to see a lot around poison ivy is these, what I can only describe as Mario plants. I think they have a specific name, but I was never really that big into Mario, so I don't know what they are. But you know the ones that they come, fire plants? I can't remember what they're called. I'm sure somebody will let me know in the comments. But those things, the sort of teethy plants, you get quite a lot in poison ivy episodes of things, and I've never really liked them, I'll be honest. It seems kind of weird to have a plant with teeth in a sort of carnivorous plant come animal come. It's not right. It doesn't work for me. If you're going to have a carnivorous plant, it should be a carnivorous plant. So with the plants around her, I decided to avoid that entirely and go for much more of a vine, overgrown vine, some kind of lifelike triffid thing going on, maybe. So there's barbs on the vines and stuff like this. So it's very much more plant-based as opposed to weird animal plant thing. I really hope you understand what I mean when I say plant, animal, teeth thing, otherwise I am talking absolute rubbish at you. I've also used a technique that I use quite a lot in paintings, especially when I'm trying to portray a character or a scene that I want the viewer to be a little bit on edge, and that is I've put it all over at an angle at about 30 degrees. In film, that's called a Dutch angle. I don't know whether it's called the same thing in art, but certainly in film it would be called a Dutch angle, and it has the effect of putting the viewer, the reader or whatever, on edge slightly. It makes everything feel just slightly unnerving. So it is a technique that I use quite a lot in my paintings, but I think that it's especially effective here for a couple of reasons. Another thing that I noticed as I was doing the line work and getting towards the end of the line work is that I'd actually messed up the perspective, and the background and the foreground were off at a slightly different angle to one another, and then kicked with that Dutch angle as well. It gave the entire scene this feeling like it was twisting into the background, and I really liked it. I actually got rid of it, and I part of me wonders whether it would have been better to keep it, but the rest of me is sort of thinking, no, actually, the perspective should be correct as opposed to twisted in this sort of weird helix pattern. I think that it could have been really cool. I think it would have lended itself to the character as well. Poison ivy tends to use pheromones and things in order to take control of people's minds, especially men. So that could have been representative of that, but again, at the same time, I just think that it was probably a better idea just to make the perspective correct. So I did go back and fix that. Now, another thing that I wasn't particularly sure about, and I'd love to get your guys' opinion on this, poison ivy is quite often portrayed in two different ways, either with very human skin tone or a green skin tone. I tried both here. I started off with human, and slowly I worked it towards more of a greenish skin tone, which looked really cool, until a little bit later into the painting where I just out of curiosity did a layer just to switch it back to a human flesh tone. And I personally think that it looks better with a human flesh tone. I showed it to a couple of my friends to get their reaction, to see what they thought of it, and one of them disagreed and said that the green skin tone was better, and the other one agreed with me that the human skin tone was better. So I would love to know your opinions of this. So hopefully by the end of the painting you will have seen those two different versions being made and being flicked back and forwards between. Let me know in the comments which one you prefer, whether you prefer the green poison ivy or the sort of human-esque poison ivy. I may even do a very quick overlay of the green skin tone at the end of the video so that you can see a direct comparison between the two. Perhaps if I can work out how to do it, I'll stick one of the polls in the card at the end as well. I don't know how to do that, so I'll have to figure it out. If I can, I'll do that. If not, then leave me a comment down below. There's a great many things that I would have loved to have added to this painting. As I say, the line work did take me a really long time, far longer than I expected it to. as a result, I actually left a lot of things out. One of the things that I wanted to do, for example, I've got the 2 plant pots on either side. I was originally going to have many more of those sort of on both the top shelf and maybe some broken pots and things down on the bottom shelves. I also wanted to add some mosses and grasses and things growing up between the paving slabs, but again, I just felt like I was spending so much time on the line work that it wasn't going to ultimately add anything to the final picture. I could have just spent another 8-9 hours, however long it took me, just detailing the line work, and then the painting would have taken even longer and you probably wouldn't have a video today. So I decided to hold back and just get on with the rest of it. I think now though we are rapidly approaching the end of this video, so there's a couple more things that I'll point out that I've done here. I've added in atmospheric layers, I've put things floating in the air, I've added in lighting coming from behind her. Both we've got a bit of rim lighting hitting her, some moonlight I guess coming through the glass of the greenhouse. All these things I find help tie together the final picture and make it feel a lot more 3D and really set everything into the final picture, like everything is part of that environment. Of course, I also added in the vines and things which she has creeping over her with the rose heads, rose buds, which are coming up out of her hands. I really like that. I think it adds to that slightly menacing aesthetic, the fact that she's walking towards you holding some quite innocent looking plants in her hands, and yet around her are these devil plants coming out from behind her. I think it works really well and very much sells the character of Poison Ivy. So there we have it, that is the 3rd addition to my Rogues Gallery. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Also let me know what you think about the skin tone. Do you prefer the green or the flesh coloured skin tones on Poison Ivy? If you've enjoyed the video, do leave me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know what character you would like to see me add to the Rogues Gallery next. And until the next video, I will see you later.